They know where they're going, they know how they're getting there, and they're having fun, and they're doing it together. When we achieve that, man, are we going to have 4 great years in Washington, D.C., and in Lansing, and in your local government when we win, because we have the right vision for America. And you know, you've got a great person here to explain to you what that vision is with Vivek. Vivek, thank you. There's only one thing that I can figure out why I feel sorry for Vivek. Where do you think he's from? He's from Ohio. He's from Ohio. And you know, Buckeyes. This summer, I hear the University of Michigan is holding a summer camp, especially focused on the state of Ohio, to teach the people in Ohio how to play football. I saw Vivek a few months ago. He has been here often. He is coming back. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you have done and that you are doing to make sure that we are a successful party in November. We know that you're going to bring a new senator across the finish line in Ohio. We're going to do the same thing here in Michigan, and we are all going to celebrate together in November. I'm humbled by the opportunity to lead you. I'm not sure. Leaders actually, I worked at Herman Miller. Leaders serve those that they lead. And we are here, and our team is here to serve you over the next 5 months and lead us on to victory. Again, thank you so much, and thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for bringing and setting the example in Livingston for what we need to do at the state level. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Hoekstra. All right, so next on our list is a man that he has been the voice of conservatism for probably the last year. You were here a year ago in May. It's been, we're at our 1-year anniversary. We loved you then. We loved you enough to have you come back. We all want to see you continue on in this political arena because you have amazing things to say. We believe in your vision too, and we can't hear what you have to say tonight. So please, let's give a round of applause for Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy.
I gotta say, we really believe since the Republican Party doesn't stand for diversity. We got Ohio guys in the middle of the Wolverine crowd here. We believe in national unity. I gotta first of all give another round of applause to your great state chairman, Pete Hoekstra. You're a model of what leadership in our party is. And I think it's a beautiful thing because we as Republicans, we got to be able to disagree. Sometimes we got to be able to actually have out our disagreements in the open. We don't hide that. We don't want to paper them over, but at a certain point, you need leaders who stand up for ultimately what we require as a party, which is to win. And I appreciate your spirit and everything you're doing. It's not just Pete. I want to recognize Rob Rodriguez right next to you. There you go, Rob. Great job. And thank you for the invitation. And a round of applause for Jessica as well. Thank you for this warm welcome. You guys are doing a great job. I'm sitting here wearing a blue tie in the reddest county in Michigan, so more to that diversity. And so many of you, I've been coming here since the early stages of our campaign. We actually planned to make it past Iowa. Didn't quite do that, but I planted the seeds in Michigan that we were going to be here for a long time. Familiar faces from Sam Matthews, Sandy Pensler, Dominic, Hema. Good to see so many friends in this room here tonight who I'm really grateful for the warm reception you've given us. I don't mean to be a wet blanket on the evening, but I'm going to offer tonight actually a bit of a dire warning, actually. I'd love to be the guy who comes in here and tells you right now that it is morning in America. I respect the heck out of Ronald Reagan and his legacy. But I don't think Ronald Reagan would come in here and tell you today that it's morning in America right now, because it's not. I don't believe in peddling fake optimism. I'd love to tell you the American dream is alive and well. It is not. It is alive and hanging on for life support. And what I'm worried about this year, I have a really tangible worry this year, is that 2 years ago, we were promised a red wave that never came. Remember that? Yeah, they blamed everything from Donald Trump to abortion. That wasn't it. I'm going to talk about what it really is at the heart of that. I am worried that we are currently on track to see that same disappointment this time around. I really want us to wake up to that. Complacency is not an option right now. First of all, good news. I talked to Donald Trump earlier today, told him I was going to be here this afternoon. He was headed to the South Bronx. He's in great spirits despite what they're doing to him, and I respect that. And we need to make sure he's the best version of himself, that he's actually able to withstand the attacks against him as he will. And I'm confident he will. And we have to make sure he's the next commander-in-chief and 47th president of the United States, as everybody in this room is going to do. I'm counting on you to do it. But you cannot look at those poll numbers now. Yeah, make us feel good when we see where are we in the election. This election has not yet even begun. Okay, I'm going to tell you, the same people, they started with the civil suits. Then they moved to the criminal suits. Then the state-level prosecutions. Then the federal prosecutions. Then forget the prosecutions, try to take him off the ballot even without going through the judicial system. I went to that courthouse in New York 2 weeks ago. Sitting in the middle of it. I gotta describe it to you because you can't see it just from the TV or the news reports of it. It feels like you're in the middle of a third world nation sitting there. I'm not kidding. The electrical wiring. This is a beautiful room. These chandeliers are nice. We've got a nice first world environment here, not in the court in the Southern District of Manhattan, in the lower Manhattan area. You got electric wiring showing up, barely temperature control, air you can barely breathe it in. It's so disgusting that they literally tell you, they give you hand sanitizer wipes, the team did, to just keep your hands clean as you walk in. But then you start to see the trial actually proceed, and you realize the only thing more third world than that environment is actually what's happening inside that courtroom. I spent a full day watching Michael Cohen testify on the stand. At the end of that day, nobody in New York or in the United States of America could tell you what exactly is even the crime that Donald Trump is exactly being tried for. Nobody could tell you. Just tell me what the crime is. You couldn't tell me what it is. But then you sort of see this, the other side, you think about this, they're one step ahead of us. Right? So we can complain about the trial, but they're playing chess while we're playing checkers. Anybody notice when that next debate was scheduled? For a whole year, you have President Biden refusing to commit to a debate. Then all of a sudden, a 180-degree shift. You don't see that happen on a dime unless there's something else going on. That debate is set for June 27th to be hosted by CNN at CNN's headquarters with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash as the moderators with no live audience. That would be the equivalent of setting up a debate in the middle of Mississippi with Donald Trump and a live audience hosted by Fox News. Would they agree to that? No, but we've agreed to that now to them. But the most important part to pay attention to is the date of it. It's June 27th. That makes this the earliest presidential debate ever in recorded televised history of this country, and the first one ever to happen before the Democratic National Committee. The DNC is in August. The presidential debate is in June. What does that tell you? This is the final audition before Joe Biden actually gets to be the nominee. Right? They've set themselves up for a win-win. The expectations are so low. You got a senile man who the people around him who are actually operating him as their puppet. I mean, this mistake we make, we rail against Joe Biden. It's a mistake to rail against Joe Biden because, A, he is not really the president of the United States, not in any functional sense of the word. He's not operating as the president. He is a puppet for the managerial class sitting underneath him. But what they've done is they set the expectations so low that you've got the ultimate home court advantage. If he even exceeds those expectations a little bit in that debate, that's a win for them because then they reset this race. But if he doesn't, which is what I expect is going to happen, then he's out as the nominee, and that's when the real race begins. You want to wait for, they'll talk about Gavin Newsom. That's a false target. Get ready for Michelle Obama. I think that's what's coming later this year. So whatever it is, what I want to tell you is this race has not yet begun. Feeling good and complacent This is a feigned retreat. It's a tactic in warfare. You lead the enemy to a false target precisely to trap them. That's what's happening. It happened in 2022. It's going to happen again. And I'll tell you right now, I'm using the language of war because we are in the middle of a war in this country. I don't use that term lightly. War is one of these things that speaks itself into existence. And the way we're going to win this war is through knowledge and through peace, not through violence. But we are in the middle of a war in this country. It is not the war that the media would have you believe, between black and white. It's not a war between man and woman or gay and straight. It's not even really a war between Democrat and Republican amongst ordinary Americans. It is a war between those of us who love the United States of America and our founding ideals, and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. That is the dividing line in our country today. It is a war between the managerial class and the deep state and the everyday citizen. It is a war between the Great Reset and the Great Uprising. It is a war for our sovereignty as a nation. That is what's at stake in this election. It is a 1776 moment in the United States of America right now. And now more than ever, we need a commander-in-chief who's going to lead us to victory in that war. That man is going to be Donald Trump. But it also needs leaders at every step, from the state level down to the county level, down to Congress, down to the U.S. Senate, to actually make sure we turn that agenda into reality. And here's how we're going to do it. That's what I'm talking about tonight. We are not going to win this war just by obsessing over our enemy. We're going to win this war by rediscovering who we are and what we actually stand for. You see, the left they're very good at this, actually. You got to give credit where credit is due. It's the wrong vision, but they will give you a vision. They will feed that poison to our youth. Look at the people demonstrating on campuses, chanting words like intifada when they're trying to say intifada. They don't even know what they're saying. But that's the point. That's the point, is that their follower base, they are lost. They don't know what they believe. They're just hungry for purpose and meaning, and they'll follow the first thing they're fed. But the left is very good at this. They will give them a vision of race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we've fallen into the trap. We're sitting here criticizing that vision, criticizing the radical Biden agenda. I've done plenty of this. Without offering an alternative vision of our own. What do we actually stand for as Republicans, as conservatives, as Americans? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? It means we believe in the ideals of 1776. The individual, the family, the nation, and God beat race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to stand for something. We cannot anymore just be a party that is running from something. We got to be running to something. Back to our vision of what it means to be a citizen of this nation. Young people especially. I'll tell you, I'll speak for my generation. I'm 38 years old. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. And I will tell you something about our generation. It's not that they're against us. Your son, Jessica, who brought you over to Donald Trump's camp, as I understand. I love that. Where is he? Connor, stand up, man. He was a good volunteer today as we were doing the photo line and everything else. What were you for Halloween a couple years ago? Donald Trump. I love that. He said somebody slammed the door in his face. I said they should try that at our southern border. That'd be a good tactic. But I'll tell you, it's not even my generation, your generation. They're not against us. They are lost, looking for direction, right? At a moment in our history when faith, family, patriotism, hard work, these things have disappeared. When you have a vacuum that runs that deep, that's when the poison fills the void. You almost pick your favorite one, and it doesn't matter what it is. We obsess over it too much at times. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism. Now you got anti-Semitism, but it's just the latest symptom of that deeper void. We got to fill that void with the real thing. There's an old saying that goes, if you have a hole the size of God in your heart and God does not fill it, something else will instead. If you don't pledge allegiance to that flag, to this flag of the United States of America, you're going to pledge allegiance to a different flag instead. That's why you go to Washington, D.C. in the month of June. I kid you not. Walk around. I took my son to the streets of Washington, D.C. last June.
you see more transgender flags in our nation's capital than you see flags for the United States of America. That's what's wrong in our country is the left understands people need a vision. We are hungry to believe in something bigger than ourselves, yet we cannot even answer what it means to be an American. What does it mean to be an American? It means we believe in the ideals that our founding fathers fought for. Ideals like merit and the pursuit of excellence. That you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why we need to end the racial quota systems and affirmative action and the DEI agenda in our military and every area of American life. It has been a cancer on our national soul, and we are done with it. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. And that is why you're darn right we're going to use our own military to secure our own southern border. You know what? Donald Trump says it well. If we've had the largest mass influx of illegal immigrants into this country in our nation's history, then we are darn well going to have the largest mass deportation in the history of our country as well. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. Means that the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. Not the shadow government and the D.C. bureaucracy. It's where I was earlier today. I was in the swamp earlier today. It's still kind of... I tried to change clothes, but I couldn't quite make it. It's sort of you get it. The air is thick. You get a disgusting sort of sweat with you when you go to D.C. The people who work at Congress, we could see Capitol Hill from the place where I was talking, a bunch of bureaucrats or their close kindred who were in the room. I took my son to Congress. Felt like we're walking around in a museum. That's not where the laws are made anymore. They're delegated to three-letter agencies, FBI, ATF, CDC, God knows what, EPA, FTC, SEC, God knows what, alphabet soup. That's not what our founding fathers wrote into the Constitution. There are three branches of government in the United States, not four. Those administrative agencies are unconstitutional. And we Republicans, we're done reforming it. We got to get in there and shut it down. That's how we get this country back and revive our constitutional republic. You see, these are not black ideas or white ideas. Right? Donald Trump was in the South Bronx today. I was in Chicago last weekend, met countless black voters in minority neighborhoods. A bunch of them came up and said, I would have voted for you. I'm voting for Donald Trump in this race. I said, how do you usually vote? I usually vote Democrat. I said, great, come our way. The reason is America First includes all Americans, actually. Right? The first moral duty of every elected leader is to the citizens of this country, not another one. To the citizens of this country, not to their own pocketbooks. That's what it means to be an American. Our founding fathers, they fought a revolution for this in 1776. We talk about them a lot. We don't actually ask what became of them. What happened to the founding fathers who signed our Declaration of Independence? 56 men signed that document in 1776. What happened to them? 12 of them had their homes ransacked and burned by the British. 5 of them were captured by the British and tortured until their death. 9 of them died in the Revolutionary War. 3 more of them had their kids die in the Revolutionary War. Many of them died bankrupt because they had their private property seized by the tyrants who were in power. Does that sound familiar to anybody? That's a sacrifice our founding fathers made. What I'll tell you is this. When we face our founding fathers in the afterlife, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, John Jay, and they ask us, what sacrifice did you make for your country? We better have a darn good answer to actually give them. That is why you're here tonight. This isn't to celebrate. This is to make the sacrifice required to save this country and pass it on to our children. I want to thank you, every one of you, for being here to support this county's party and this state's party. It's not elective. This isn't some option. This isn't a luxury. This is a requirement for the future existence of our country. And I think I speak for every parent and grandparent in this room when I say this. The inheritance we want to give our kids. I say this as a father of 2 sons myself. The inheritance I want to give my kids, the inheritance we want to give our kids, isn't just a bunch of green pieces of paper. It is a country greater than the one we actually grew up in. That will take a sacrifice of every one of you. I am asking you to make that sacrifice for your country this year. You're not doing it right. We're not doing it right unless you actually feel it. Right? It's easy to write that check if you've lived the American dream and feel good about yourself that you made a contribution. You're not doing it right unless you write it of a size that actually makes you feel something. Makes you actually feel a sense of loss. Money's not the only way to do it. When you are the only person in a room who believes what you do, in a school board meeting, in a corporate board meeting, meeting of your nonprofit board, whatever it is. Maybe it's just the dinner table with your family. When you are the only person in a room who believes what you do, you have an obligation now more than ever to say it, and say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect thy neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think. There's this culture of fear that has spread across our country like an epidemic. Fear of losing your job, fear of your kids getting a bad grade in school, fear of becoming an outcast in your own community. And you know what? If you feel like, oh, I'm saying something that I heard on TV yesterday, I could say it today. No, you're not doing it right. If you're not taking a risk, if you don't feel that sense of risk, if you don't feel that sense of sacrifice in the way that our founding fathers did in 1776, that means we're not doing enough. Every one of you in here is a patriot who loves this country. Where's my 2A patriots? See a bunch of you out there. Thank you. Several of you. The Second Amendment, by the way, is not it's not a recommendation. It's a right. Sometimes people forget that. First county to have constitutional carry in Michigan. Proud to be here in Livingston County tonight, remembering our Constitution. Our founding fathers understood that, but I'm asking every one of you to think like our founding fathers, young people in the room. Remember these guys? These guys were different than the kind of politicians you get anymore in Washington, D.C. Thomas Jefferson, you want to know what? I was 38 when I ran for president. I told you I was the youngest ever Republican. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. There you go. And he invented the swivel chair while he was at it. Funny enough. Not making this up. The modern swivel chair we sit in today was invented by Thomas Jefferson. He invented the polygraph test, the early version of the lie detector test. He invented a number of musical instruments. He nearly bankrupted himself building libraries for this country. Think about that. The politicians of today, many of them go to Washington, D.C. to collect gold bars from foreign countries to be able to line up their own pockets. Our founding fathers were bankrupting themselves to serve this country. It wasn't just Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Franklin, he invented the lightning rod, the gas stove, the early progenitor of the Franklin stove. The gas stove of today was the Franklin stove. Early advent of thermodynamics. That's Benjamin Franklin right there. The bifocal spectacles that we wear, a remedy to the common cold. All these things were invented by a man who also co-signed the Declaration of Independence. Robert Livingston, he was an ambassador to France, also signed the Declaration. While he's an ambassador to France, just on a side gig, as a part-time endeavor, he invents the steamship along with Robert Fulton, the backbone of the Industrial Revolution. Right, you can't make this stuff up. There was something in the water back then in 1776. Today, what would we say? You're not an engineer. You didn't get that degree. You're not an expert. Shut up. Sit down. Do as you're told. Stay in your lane. Our founding fathers didn't believe in that. These guys were pioneers. They were explorers. They were unafraid. Well, you know what? It's easy to sit here and idolize our founding fathers, but you know what? God did not endow them with gifts any different than He endows each of us with today. I want every one of you to go home tonight, look yourself in the mirror, and ask yourself what unique God-given gifts God has given you. Every one of us has our own unique God-given gift. They're not the same. Right? Everybody's not the best at the same thing. We each have our own unique gift, but figure out what that is and ask yourself how you're going to use those God-given gifts to do what is right for your country in its hour of need. That's what I'm asking of you. That's what our founding fathers asked of themselves. And if we live in a 1776 moment today, it is up to us to fight for it. It took them 7.5 years to win the American Revolution. If we don't get this right in the next 7.5 years, before my older son is in high school, we don't have a country left. That's the time horizon we're working with. So this isn't somebody else's job. This isn't Donald Trump's job alone to come on high from the White House to save us. It doesn't work that way. If we are going to be saved, it is going to be because we save ourselves. Every one of you doing your part. That's what this country demands of you. That is the moment we live in today. We've grown accustomed to being taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences. I got a different shade of melanin than some of you. I'm looking around the room. We got a bunch of different shades of melanin, a bunch of different tans in the room today. Several different genders, 2 of them, to be precise. There are 2 genders, don't forget that. That's great, we are diverse. So what? Doesn't mean anything. Unless there is something greater that unites us across that diversity. E pluribus unum. It's on the back of our coins for a reason. It means from many, one. That's what we've lost in this country. When my parents came here, we used to talk about the melting pot. You don't hear about that anymore. Apparently, that's a microaggression. I reject that. This country was founded on, yes, we could celebrate our skin-deep differences. Our diversity, it could be a beautiful thing, only if there's something greater that binds us together across that diversity. Without that, just think about it. What are we? A bunch of different-looking, 2-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin, walking some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones told us to do on a given day. That's not a country. This country is a vision of what that place can be. That's America. Do we believe that vision still exists or not? I do. But it's going to take every one of us speaking those truths, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. The truth that God is real. God's not a 4-letter word. We will not apologize for it. We are one nation under God. That's who we are. Speak the truth that there are 2 genders, not 3 or 100. Speak the truth that the climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. They can shut down that battery plant in Goshen that I visited earlier in the campaign for it. Speak the truth that the nuclear family isn't a bad word. It is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism is still the best system we have to lift us up from poverty. Reverse racism is racism. Throw it out the door. An open border is not a border. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And our U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor in known mankind's history. These are the hard truths that bind us together as Americans. That's what we've forgotten. And if we revive those ideals, that shared creed that binds us together, we don't have to be this nation in decline anymore that we've become. Right, we're taught to believe we're at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. That all we have is to fight over the scraps of this shrinking pie. I don't think we have to be. We're a nation in decline right now, but it doesn't have to stay that way. There were many rises and many falls of the Roman Empire, actually. There wasn't one rise and one fall. There doesn't have to be just one rise and one fall of this American journey either. What I think is right now as a nation, we're really still a little young, actually. Going through our own version of adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again, actually. You go through your adolescence, you do some stupid things. We all do. I had some dumber Halloween costumes. Yours was good, but we all make some mistakes. But we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So no, we don't have to be this nation in decline. I still believe we can be a nation in our ascent. Maybe even the early stages of our ascent. Maybe we're not even at base camp. On our way still to that shining city on a hill. I opened with Reagan, I'll close with him. That country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it. When we tell them that you get ahead in the United States of America with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, that is what we will revive to save this great nation. Thank you all. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Do not stop fighting until we get the job done. This nation is worth saving, and save it we will. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Take the questions. Yeah, we can take the questions. Yeah. Yes, yeah, we can take a few questions. Absolutely. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if you'd like. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We need another mic.
I promised Jessica we'd take a couple questions, so we'll raise your hands and then we'll maybe take 3 or 4, Jessica.
Okay, so we're going to take 3 or 4. Rob's going to hit one side, I'm going to hit this side. If everyone can sit down and who wants to speak, raise your hand, please.
Okay, we got a guy out here on my side. Guy in the blue and a guy in the purple.
And I have one right here. So there's our 3.
Okay, here's our first question.
Vivek, thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you. What are we going to do about the rising mortality and morbidity in the United States right now? It is happening every single moment as we breathe.
Yeah, look, a lot of this is the capture of agencies by our food industry. Let's start with that. You got the diabetes and obesity epidemic. You got the food industry effectively capturing food and nutrition services in the USDA. So a lot of this is just capture of the system that allows pharmaceutical companies and food companies to be able to foster the greater system that allows them to keep their business model intact. We're not going to fix this by talking about cuts to Social Security and Medicare. I don't think that that's going to be the right answer. The right answer is actually we need a healthier population. That's the way we're actually going to ultimately save our healthcare system. So that's going to be a longer conversation about industry capture that we're not going to get into the details of tonight. But I will tell you, if we have politicians that start working for the people who actually vote them in, rather than for the people who actually fund their campaigns, we're going to be a lot better off for it. That's what I would say. Thank you. We'll go to this gentleman right here. We'll go right on the other side of the room right here.
You know, I know that you have larger ambitions, but we could use a really good governor.
If I could help you to campaign for whoever's going to actually get that job, boy, would we do a national service.
My real question is,
She wants to replace Biden, by the way. So she's waiting for June 27th, too.
she's totally delusional. But how do we like reverse the capture of younger generations, Gen Z, millennials? How do we reverse this? Because a lot of parents are afraid to have these conversations with their kids. They're afraid to stand up. They're afraid to lose the friendship that they have with their kids, even though that's not the point of being a parent.
Yeah.
How do we change that?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting that I see going on in the country is, where did a lot of this woke stuff come from in the first place, right? Think about the psychology of that 20 years ago, right? When I was a teenager, when a lot of this began, it was a rebellion against the system, right? So when you're 18 or 19 years old, there's something in you that makes you want to stand up to the man and stick it to him and be a hippie and be a countercultural person, right? And so back then it says, okay, right when we have gotten close to the promised land, right when we've gotten closest to achieving racial equality of opportunity, and you can marry who you want, if you want, and men and women can both work in the workplace, the kinds of things that civil rights activists of the prior century would have imagined was the promised land. Right when you get there, they start saying, no, we're going to stick it to the man. We see invisible racism, systemic racism. We see oppression, but it's invisible. You got to be woke or awake to it. So that began as a way to stick it to the system. Well, what's happened in the last 20 years since then is that what began as a challenge to the system has actually become the new system. So what I'm seeing in the country right now, not amongst people in my age, in their 30s, but amongst the next generation, there's something really interesting happening. People 18, 19 years old. You want to be heterodox? You want to be countercultural? You want to be a hippie, stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and call yourself a conservative. Say you want to marry somebody of the opposite sex and have children and stay married. That you believe in God and you pledge allegiance to your country. See what happens. That's the real counterculture that's actually happening. And so I think all we need to do is I don't think indoctrination works. In some ways, if we try to sort of indoctrinate and hammer ideas into the next kid's generation, it actually might even have the opposite effect. All we need to do is preserve and protect free speech in this country. Protect the idea that, you know what, you get to express your opinion as long as I get to in return. And you know what, if you get to express your opinion, you don't have to choose between speaking your mind freely and putting food on the dinner table. You get to enjoy both of those things in this country at the same time. So you know what, if you can't fire somebody for being black or gay or Muslim or white or Christian or Jewish or whatever, you shouldn't be able to fire them for being an outspoken conservative either. Protect the actual basic values to say, American dream and First Amendment, we don't make you choose. You get to enjoy both of those things at the same time. That's what it means to be American. Create free speech. And I am optimistic the rest of it is actually going to take care of itself. That's our job to do, and our kids will do the rest. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, last question.
Right.
That was a great statement coming from being in high school speeches for 42 years. That's the key. Listen, the election is the election. If you don't win, we don't win. That's that. And it's a reality. So, excluding yourself, who do you think would be the best choice for a vice president for Trump?
It's a good point. Look, I think there's a lot of good choices. But I do think that winning has to be a big part of our focus.
And so I'm going tomorrow night to the Libertarian Convention, actually. I'm speaking at the Libertarian National Convention in Washington, D.C. tomorrow night. Donald Trump's speaking there on Saturday night, and the only other person speaking there is RFK. So one of the trends that I'm seeing across the country is we're hairs trigger away from a new tidal wave of people who would have never voted Republican. Young people, libertarians, independents. You got black voters. I've met a lot of them who never would have imagined they'd come around to Donald Trump. They're about to be there. But what you're seeing is a lot of people just choosing this other random third option, RFK, as a way of saying, I'm not going to go for Biden, but not coming across the finish line. So, I don't know, you're just asking me for my opinion, but I think whoever would, the vice president usually doesn't make a difference in who people are going to vote for, but if they're going to go for a third-party candidate, whoever would be able to bring somebody who would have gone third-party over to our party, I think is the best choice. Because the reality is there's going to be a lot of positions required to make the next administration work. It doesn't matter. You can be vice president here, be in charge of one thing. You could be a special advisor here. You could be a cabinet secretary. We're going to figure it out, and it's going to be a team sport, and Donald Trump is going to put the right people in the right places. But right now, our focus has got to be on what Pete said in his opening remarks. It's got to be on winning. Because if we don't win this election, I worry about what actually follows. And so the best choice is going to be who's actually going to win independent voters or people who might go for a third party. That'd be my recommendation if you were asking me. Thank you, my man. Go to Sandy had his hand up here. Questions? And actually, I want to say a word before Sandy answers the question, because it's not just the presidency that matters. Right? You want to think about, God forbid we actually get the result we all fear in November at the presidential level. You know what the last line of defense is going to be is the U.S. Senate. 51 votes in the U.S. Senate is ultimately what stops the ultimate destruction of this country. And we can't take that for granted, but we're in a pretty good spot to make sure we got 51 seats in the U.S. Senate. And on the flip side, even if Trump is elected, we're not going to be able to work together to fully affect that agenda unless we have big majorities in both the House and the Senate. I think the Senate race here in Michigan, I've been with my friend Bernie Moreno for 2 days earlier this week, and one of the reasons I love businessmen who enter politics is we need to go in and shake up Washington, D.C. So I love that this man is running, and that's why I've been campaigning with you as well, Sandy. But let me give you the floor to ask the question.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. You've been talking about the decline or loss of our moral compass. We see it every day. We're reminded. We saw Biden forgive debt today. We see him funding terrorists and then being surprised that there's terrorism. You went down to Morehouse College, tries to use racism to solve racism. Everywhere we turn, we see a lack of moral compass. And when I listen to you, it gives hope. But time's running out. And when you're a leader in the next administration, what are the first things that you think you have to do to right that compass? Because, as you said, if we don't do it damn quickly, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing that a new president is going to be able to do is to actually enforce the laws that are already on the books. See, one of the things, they're misleading you with this border bill that Chuck Schumer wants to put up. This is a last-minute gambit Hail Mary they're throwing. You want to know what the best border policy of all is? Elect a new president that enforces the actual border laws we already have. That's actually how you get that job done. We don't have to reinvent the Constitution, right? Our founding fathers did that hard work. All we got to do is actually apply it. Second thing the president can do is, I'm not just talking about enforcing the border laws, enforce the Constitution itself. There's an executive, a legislative, and judicial branch. Shut down the fourth branch. Shutter the agencies. I'd say shut down the FBI, actually. You don't know what? Can't reform that beast. Shut down the Department of Education. Give that money to parents across this country who deserve to choose where they send their kids to school. We're striking distance of this, right? This doesn't have to be true. I spent a lot of time with Donald Trump in the last several months. And I'll tell you one thing about it. He has an ambition about him this time around where he'll be the first person to tell you. Last time, he was going through it for the first time. And I can tell you, I went through it for the first time this time around running. He ended up making it his first time around, but by the time they got into office, there were so many things that, had you known your way around just a little bit, man, you would have done 10x more damage in a good way than you did. So he knows that. So he's ready this time around. Believe me, I think the plans are laid. We know exactly what we're going to get done. All we need is actually to make sure that the game is played, I don't even say fairly, it's not going to be fairly, but that we win so big that it's too big to rig. That's what I think we require this year. This has to be a landslide. A landslide minus some shenanigans is still a victory. And I know I'm speaking to a like-minded room here. So I'll tell you this. Of course, what do we need? We need single-day voting on Election Day, make it a national holiday with paper ballots, government-issued ID to match the voter file, and English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. I want that. You want that. Let's make it happen. But we're not going to get there unless we actually win in the system we already have. All right? So that's what you got to have. That's why we got leaders like Pete who are bringing sanity to make sure that we want to get to our... I don't want to compromise on our vision. Don't compromise on your vision. Compromise is not a virtue. You can't compromise the values you actually stand for. But you can't be foolish to say you wish that into existence. It's only going to happen because you actually compete in the terrain you actually have. You got to win the game to change the game. And that's what I'm asking of every one of you this year. Is that's going to require hard work in the system we have. Landslide minus those shenanigans is still a decisive victory. And with that, Sandy, yes, we're going to enforce the laws that are already on the book, and force the actual Constitution to be the way we run this country again. That's how we get our identity back. Thank you. We'll take one last question in the very back over there. And we'll close it out. That's you, ma'am. Something tells me you have a voice I could probably hear.
Everything you've talked about is excellent. But what I want to know is when are any of the leaders running for president, especially Trump, you, everybody, is going to talk about the elephant in the room. We all know that COVID came out. We all know that the shot came out as a bioweapon. We've had 30 million people across the world die from the vaccines or injured by the vaccines, and nobody talks about it. When is somebody going to start talking about it, and it's going to be given some attention?
It's got to be the hard truth. Thank you. I appreciate that. We say the elephant in the room. I was looking at this elephant here. I like this guy. He's like a boxer. He's a fighter. I'd say you'd probably tell him the same thing. Take the gloves off. And actually, now it's time to have the real fight. So go to the hard questions. I respect that. Were there mistakes made last time around, including by Republicans? Absolutely. That's the hard answer. It's the hard truth. We locked down cities and states in this country that should not have been locked down. We mandated a vaccine that should never have been developed with the speed that it was. You think about the FDA, and I'm an advocate for medical freedom in two ways. Right? One is, actually, the government should force you to take something. But the second is you should be able to take something just because the government hasn't approved it. The same FDA that says you cannot take a medicine unless it's been through 10 years of testing and billions of dollars worth of testing is the same one that says you have no choice but not to take it for something that got rushed through in 9 months through examples of crony capitalism with companies that we now know cannot be trusted and have, for all we know, intentionally actually withheld information from the public. Now young men suffering from, what do you see, myocarditis on a given day, how many athletes have fallen straight in the sand. So the first thing we need is accountability. The government actors who were captured, the government actors who funded gain-of-function research abroad were the same ones advocating for funding the vaccines to fight the virus they created. We need accountability. That's not vengeance, that is accountability. That's the rule of law. If an ordinary citizen did it, we would have held them accountable. If your name is Anthony Fauci, you should not be exempt just because you have a government title. That's number one. But number two is if we admit our mistakes, and I think that requires us to acknowledge, our leaders are not gods. Every one of our leaders, from Donald Trump to every local leader, good-hearted leaders, we're all human beings. Okay? And I'll close on this point. Because I often say this to the left. To go to college campus to get some left-wing progressive activists, I'll tell them this, but I'll say it to our own side too, is have we ever been a perfect nation? No, we have not, actually.
Right, the left will bring up a similar example and say the elephant in the room for them is slavery 250 years ago. Have we ever been a perfect nation? No, we're not. You want to know why? Because we are a nation not of gods, but a nation of men. We are fallen human beings, every one of us, and the best our leaders do is to step up and do their best to serve this country. We've got to learn from our mistakes, and never again will we make that mistake again. Never again should a vaccine or any medicine be mandated by the government again in this country. But what I'll tell you this is, we learn from our mistakes, but I would rather be a country that has ideals and falls short of them than to be a country that has no ideals at all. Note how nobody ever calls China or Iran a hypocrite. They'll criticize the United States for it. But to be a hypocrite, you had to have ideals in the first place. So were a lot of Republicans maybe even hypocritical in the steps they took during the COVID-19 pandemic when they say they want to protect liberty? Yes, they were. But as I said, as long as we stay true to those ideals, as long as we acknowledge we're a nation founded on the pursuit of perfection. We're not perfect, but we're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union. The pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice for all. Then yes, I believe our best days, not in some fake politician way, but in a true way, believe that our best days can actually still be ahead of us. And I know we have in us a U.S. president, the 45th who will be the 47th president, who wants to make that second term even more successful than that first term by learning from what we learned in those 4 years. And so I'm asking him to embrace the fact that we're not perfect, we've never been, and we never will be. But we're a nation founded on the pursuit of that more perfect union. And if you all do your part, then yes, our best days will still be ahead of us. May God bless you and your families and our great country. Thank you again for having me tonight. We'll be back in Michigan before long, and we're counting on this stage to deliver us victory for our country. Thank you guys. God bless.
Okay, so we're going to wrap things up. We have a couple of messages we want to give before we leave here. We are going into